Hey, hi all. Welcome back to PRR Knowledge Center. In this today's session, we'll talk about a couple of topics in ASP.NET architecture. So when we talk about ASP.NET architecture, so as we discussed, ASP.NET is basically using it for developing websites and dynamic web pages, and it has a couple of class libraries and namespaces, and along with that we have other features, and we'll see all those features in the coming sessions. When it comes to ASP.NET architecture, ASP.NET works on three-tier architecture. This architecture is extremely popular because they increase application performance, scalability, and flexibility, and also code reusability. So the three-tier architecture applications are divided into three major areas, right? Let me explain you more in detail about the three-tier architecture. I'm just opening my notepad. So when you talk about three-tier architecture in detail, right? So three-tier architecture. Okay. So one thing is the data layer, right? So we can say a data layer which actually manages the data storage and retrieval. And second thing is business layer, right? Business layer, right? Which means maintains the business rules and logic you are going to write for manipulating and retrieving of data from the database. And third one is this is the presentation layer which manages the user interface, right? Presentation layer. So these are the three layers which ASP.NET coming up with beautiful architecture. The first layer basically manages the data storage and retrieval, and second layer consisting of logics which maintains the business process and the rules and validations. And third one is a presentation layer which manages the user interface and the related presentation stuff which you are now showing on the screen or page on the browser. So when it comes to presentation layer in detail, if you wanted to talk about, so this presentation layer provides the interfaces to the users of website or an application, right? It contains pages like ASP pages, or if you are developing Windows forms, then you will have Windows forms, right? Where data is presented to the user, or user enter the information on the UI. This layer communicates with business layer. In ASP.NET, the code behind file and HTML file are separate files, right? So when we go and see here, like let me show you a demonstration. If you look at here, this is the presentation layer for me. This is something event handler ASP page. This is the presentation layer, which basically having .asp page. This ASP page will communicate with the code behind. They communicate with the business layer. That means code behind stuff coming to here. This is the code behind stuff, and it is again separated file, right? So this is separated file for me. This is the ASPIX is a design, and this is a separated file, the file for the code behind. The HTML file defines the look and layout of the web form, like this one, right? And code behind file contains the presentational logic, which I'm going to write it for. Let's say that. So on clicking on so and so button, apply this logic. On clicking on so and so other button, clicking on so and so, on filing on page load, execute so and so logic, right? So this is something helps the user, designers and developers, right? Works on a separate section for the design. This one, the HTML layout, and designers don't have to worry about business logic to make user interface changes, and developers don't have to worry about to update code because these are separate files, right? When come to the business layer or an application layer act between application layer and data access layer, right? When you talk about the business layer, like this is going to act as a proxy between presentation and the data layer. This layer contains our logics and validating the data and other functions. So in this layer, in the business layer, basically what we are doing is programmer access the data access layer, also known as the DAL layer, which is the data layer, right? As example, suppose many users want to register and kind of he or she fills all the details and click on submit button to post the data into server or want to show on the presentation layer, then he's going to call a business layer. So in business layer, programmers only access the function and pass the parameter that is provided by the end user as an example. Okay, coming to the last layer, data layer. So I think you'll look like, this is the first layer, this is second and third. So let me change the index. So otherwise you're getting confusing here, right? So I'm saying this is the first layer, this is the presentation layer, right? And this is the second layer, right? That means business layer. And the last one is data layer. So business layer is the between UI and data layer, right? So coming to the data layer, all the code related to the database is written in the data layer. So it contains methods to connect with the database. It also contains the methods to perform like kind of DML operations, like insert, update, delete, and selection of some data according to the SQL query. All these things can be written in the data layer. That is the third layer. So these three are the three-tier architecture. And if you want, you can add other layers also. But by default, ASP.NET comes up with this kind of three-tier architecture. This is going to default architecture works on by ASP.NET. Like, so if you look at the advantages, like what kind of advantages we can achieve with this three-tier architecture is one thing is a flexibility, right? So if you talk about, let me just start here. If you talk about the advantage of three-tier architecture, right? First thing is flexibility, right? Flexibility. So flexibility is nothing but all the layers have separated code. So it makes the application much more flexible to change. That means if you look at the previous kind of a screen for an event handler, we have a HTML layout that is in the ASPIX page, and we have a code behind file which is aspix.cs file as a separate file. So all these files are separate files. So that means you have more flexibility in doing or make a change in your code, and it has solved all the problems, dependency problems, and also it doesn't depends on other works, right? Other developer works. So if you wanted to do some business logic process, you do your on your own way, like just pulling or taking up that business layer folder. And if you're doing it presentation layer, that again in separate folder or separate file, hence you can do it in parallel and no need of no wait for others works to be completed. So all the layers have separate files here, separate code, hence application much more flexible. And coming to the second benefit is maintainability, right? Maintainability, maintain, right? So that means you can change to the components in one layer, and it will not affect, it will not give any impacts, right? Or any other layers. So you can maintain the application very easily. That means, so you have three folders separately, like presentation is separate, business is separate, data layer is separate, right? So you can change the component on on one layer, and it will not affect any other layers, right? That means easily maintaining of your stuff. Coming to the third kind of advantage, reusability. So you have here separated folder, right? Reusability, you have a separate folders, hence you can use this business layer in some other project, or you can use this same data layer in some other project, because these are separate folders and having separate DLLs and namespaces. You just give a reference of these folders in other projects and you can use it. That means reusing of your data layer, reusing of your business layer instead of writing for each and every project. That means, so a single library or component may be accessed by multiple components in the presentation layer, right? So it is easier to implement reusable components by separating the application into multiple layer mix here in the three layers. And last one is scalability. Coming to the last one is scalability. Scalability. So scalability is nothing but you can deploy application components across multiple servers. So it makes the system much more scalable, right? Let us come to the picture called service-oriented architecture, where we have other architecture after this three-tier architecture, that is service-oriented architecture. That means in between business layer and the presentation layer, so we may have a SOA here. That means we have a service layer here, service-oriented architecture, right? So that means service layer. So when I hit or browse a page here, right, this is calling a presentation layer first, right, and then hitting to service, right. The service is interacting with my business layer. You do one thing, I think you keep business layer as it is, right? Service layer is going to call business layer is going to call data layer. Now I deploy a presentation layer in one system, and then I'll go to deploy the service layer in other system. The way that like I'll get more scalability because I have my deployment in different servers. I definitely get my much scalable, response comparatively deploying in a single server. That means you will be having two servers which is sharing the request between these two servers, right? Because UI is in one server and the other stuff is deploying in a different server, because you don't have a kind of tightly coupling here. You have a loosely coupling, but anyway we have a high coherency, right? So but UI could be in a different system and other all layers could be in a different system, which will definitely make scalability, right? So these are the benefits we have three-tier architecture, right? So if you wanted to look at the kind of scenario like how it looks like, right? You can see that. So this is something presentation layer, and this is a business layer, and this is the data layer, right? So web forms and Windows forms will be kind of presentation, and C# classes for the business logic, and kind of other classes would be a data layer. Let us create a kind of structure, and you will be knowing and understanding how it is working out. So in this session, we'll look at other couple of topics here in detail information about an event handlers and a custom class creation of web application. So as part of second topic, so we can see like how to create kind of other layers in the business and the data layer, and see like how you are integrating it to your presentation layer. Like going to my demonstration part here. So I have page here which actually having couple of controls, first value, second value, and one button which basically calculates these two values and put that result into third text box. So coming to this HTML layout here, this is server side control button is, and text boxes, three text boxes are again server side controls, right? So I'm clicking on some button, right? I don't have any event to be fired here. So I'll just write some event. So that means on click, so that it is going to fire that event, right? So on click equal to, right? And I'm going to say server side. So going to the design here, right? And I have design looks like this way, like this come do. Okay, and going to the code behind, so I have a function here, server side, which actually at present, let me remove this, right? Let me remove this also so that you will have some idea. At present, I don't have any definition inside of it. I'll just comment this, right? And comment this, so that I'll read a value from a text box 1 and text box 2, and then I'll put the sum of the value into the third text box. This is the definition inside of function. So when you talk about event handling, if you look at every event is having two parameters here, right? This is what we are talking about event handling in the ASP.NET. So this is the great feature provided by ASP.NET. So it allows implement event handling, right? To any application in ASP.NET. Suppose we have a button, in this case, some button, right? So like we have to add action to that button and just added action to this particular some button as some server side, right? This is the action I've added here, some server side. So this is the action is going to fire. So as soon as the action is hit or button is clicked, then the relevant action is going to fire. So we can easily do this by just writing on click event for the button. So this can be done both client and server side. I think we have already explained in the earlier sessions like how we are going to attach the client side event as well as server side event. And ASP.NET Web, right? So we have event handling is coming up with kind of two parameters, two arguments here. So like if you look at here, each event is having two arguments. One is like the object that raised the event, and other one is like object containing information about event, right? Look at any event which basically having two arguments, right? And I think you can see other couple of events also. Let me do this couple of events, like let me see that. Okay, if you look at other events here, a couple of events have been written here: page init and page pre-rendered, page unload, page disposed, and page error, right? So these are all events which basically belonging to the page object. So and if you look at all the events are having two arguments: sender and event args. So this page event, like page init, is basically files the control is initialized, and the page pre-render is basically files when the page is rendered, and page unload is basically files when the control unloaded or released from the memory, and the page disposed basically fires when the control is released. Error again fires when the control or user request for the like no user request is having some unhandled exception, then it is going to fire. So what I'm trying to explain about here is every event in ASP.NET basically having two arguments, and you should understand like the first one is basically containing the event which got fired via some so and so X button or X control, and second argument is basically containing the information about event. And not only this, if you look at the kind of application global.asx.cs file, here we have application related events and session related events. So these all events also having two arguments. This is application start, session start, begin request, authenticate request, application error, session end, and application end, right? So application end, it will raise this event when application started. Of course, it is carrying again two parameters, and application end again having same thing when this is carrying two parameters. This will fire when the application ends, and session ends will fire when the user requests for the first time, right? And session end will get fired when the user wants to end the session, right? So like that. So the page events also get fired based on the controls you are putting it here. Okay, so if you want more in detail information in detail like on this event handling, right, you just run this and see like how it is working. So let me run through so that you will see like how it is firing the events and coming up the detail of control or the object into these arguments, like, right? I'm just keeping here each debug here so that see like which event is firing very fast as per page lifecycle of ASP.NET, right? It is going to fire init fast. Let me see that. Where is that? It is still rendering. Let me wait for that. It is firing init first method, and then it goes to page pre-render, and then it goes to kind of page unload. I think I must have kept debugger here. So then page is loaded. When I say give some values and click on some button, this is again going to fire page load because it's a server side event. This is firing page init, and then goes to page load. So anyway, the page init is the default event which is going to fire for every page submission or each post back, right? And then it goes to page pre-rendered, goes to page unload, and then calculate some. Where is that method? This thing, right? So right now we don't have any information in detail, right? This is not calculating any value. So if you just want to fire something, let me uh, uncomment this and see like how it is firing the event. So again, it fires page init first, and then page pre-render, page load, and page dispose, and page unload, and after that the relevant event which is causing page submission, page init, and page load, page pre-render, and page unload, and then finally seeing your screen and clicking on this, it is coming page init again, and coming to the page load, and coming to the actual event of the button, and then it is calculating, and then again firing pre-render and load because you are now taking hold of this control. So till this rendered and released from the memory, it won't appear here. So that's why the pre-render and unload events are firing even you are assigning a value. When I click on some, it is firing init and payload and relevant event of button, and you are accessing a control, right? Until unless you access and release the control, right, these events will get fired. Pre-render is going to fire, unload is going to fire once action is done. Like, so this is something the event handling is happening it inside of ASP.NET. So only thing is you have to keep in mind that so every server side event is basically having two arguments. One is sender, other one is event arguments, which is one is first pair argument is having the raised event control ID, and second argument containing the kind of information about the event. Okay, so coming to the next one, the thing is custom class creation for web application. Let me try to create a class here and how to use that into my application. So for this, I think I already have a class here. So if you look at here, this is the main class, partial class, which comes up with all the events. I just created a demo class here, and this is the constructor I created, and I just declared a value, kind of a public string sample value, and I just written one more method, display value, which is accepting one parameter, and I'm just returning that value by just adding demo value, right? So how to integrate that is, so inside of this button click, right, I'm just integrating as like you just create an instance of your new class like demo class because the class name is demo, and then assign some value, custom class created, and then you invoke this display value method so that it will come with the demo value static string and the pass value. Let me look this, right, how it is looking like. I'm just removing all the breakpoints and I'm just writing that. So this is creating a class, custom class inside of your page, right? Suppose if you wanted to create a class outside, right? How to create that so that you'll have an idea on that, right? I'm just doing this, clicking on that. Demo value, custom class created. This is what we are trying to return value. That value is going to be no displayed on the screen because we are writing that using response.write. Suppose if I want to create a class outside of the project, let me comment this. So I'm just going here, I'm just going to add a project here, new project. Let me try to create a name for the class library, right? I'm saying a biz layer. This is my biz layer. So after giving this, it is going to create biz layer, coming up with this thing, clist biz, or you say clist demo, right? This is going to change the name of your class. Now here you define whatever you wanted to create here. Uh, Public string, right? Like str demo value, right? I'm declaring a method public string display value, right? Which is again accepting some string value, and inside of that I'm just returning, right, uh, demo value, right, plus str value which you have passed, right? Now I want to use this class, right? How to use that? So what you need to do is you need to build this class so that it will build and create a dll called bizlay.dll, and that dll you need to give a reference on the presentation layer. Going to the references and right click on it, add a reference, and select the projects, and by default you have the newly created folder. Clicking on that, it is going to add busy layer reference to your presentation layer. So going here, and you have to import that namespace to use that, right? Using, right? This is the busy layer, right? Just do that. And inside a button, right, let me try to create clist demo is our class as, right, new clist demo. This is something I'm going to create an object for that class. So obj dot, right, demo value equal to, right, I'm just giving some value, custom class created, and then same as previous, I'm just writing off, right, obj dot display value, right, and close that. Now when I run this, what happened? Okay, we should pass some value, right? We'll pass this value to this particular method. Now when I run this, what it will happen is it is going to invoke, the business layer. Let me keep a pointer here and try to run this so that you will see like how it is, control jumping between presentation layer to business layer in this case, right? So I'm just running my application and see like how it is rendering. Once I get the render page, and once I get the page displaying on browser, I'm just giving some values, clicking on some button, it is coming here. When I press F11, it is going to class here, business class. And if you look at here, it's coming here, the value is coming, whatever value I'm passing it. Final value it is returning as demo value and padding with this value. And clicking on continue, this is going to be created, right? This is calling from demo value, right? Um, from this layer. Let me try that. Similar way, you can create other kind of project here, like adding and data layer, and you put all your database aspects there, and you just invoke from one class to another class as like how we are doing now, right? Hitting on that, coming here, demo value from base layer, custom class created, right? This is something how it is creating custom class and invoke or integrate into your website, right? This is a base layer, and similar way you create a DAL layer, right? Where you keep other class there, and you integrate base layer into DAL layer or DAL layer into base layer, and that basically communicates the presentation layer aspects into a DAL layer. Once the DAL layer process and give a response, and that response again you give it back to presentation layer, right? Simple as new project, and again you choose a class library, right? Click on next, and this is my DAL layer, so that it will create another project, right? As simple as business layer, right? It has again kind of stuff, CLS data layer. Let me through CLS data demo, so that it is coming up with here CLS data demo. And here what you need to do is, for this particular business layer, you need to add a reference of DAL layer in this case. For the presentation you are given business layer, for the biz layer you need to go, you just build this class, so that it will create a DLL of DAL layer dot DL, right? That DLL we are giving it here. Okay, I think I might have added a different version. I think let me clear that. I think it is looking for latest .NET framework. Let me create another project, and I'll choose a class library, right? I think this one we have to do that because we are working on .NET framework 4.8, right? This the layer, and just create on it. Oh, already having it. Let me do this. The layer, and this is right. This is data demo, right? And I'm just building this DLL, and this DLL I'm giving as a reference here, right? So that it is coming here. What you need to do is open this demo class, and you just import, right? uh, Data layer, and you just try to call whatever method from DAL layer into business layer, and from business layer you will pass that value to UI layer. This is UI layer, this is business, and this is DAL layer. Okay, I hope you understand like how to create an outside the class or inside of your presentation layer class, and how to invoke and instantiate, and how to call that class members and methods, right? So I hope you understand the in detailed information of event handlers and the custom class application for web applications. Thanks for listening to this video, and please subscribe this channel for more videos. Thank you.